Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lawrence History Project. And with me is my guest, Mr. Joseph Bella. And today we're going to be talking about an amazing person. And you youngsters under 60 probably don't know him, but you should. And we'll get into that in just a minute, Joe. Just before we do, though, I'd like to say hello to some of the people that we're getting some emails trickling in here. Now, the Lawrence History Project does not exactly burn up the internet, but we do get some emails from time to time. We want to say hello to Richard, 82 years young, from Florida, checking in with us, giving us some feedback. Also, Robert Dumont and his wife are watching. Tom Delisle can't be with us today. The dynamic trio here, the third member of the dynamic trio, is feeling a little bit under the weather. He'll be back next time. Also, Tom's son Chris has watched all the episodes. Teresa Spag, sister of John Spag, we used to hang around with. And we have somebody here, Joe, Cherry, who wants to know about she has a question about our episode about the bars and booze in Lawrence. She wants to know about the Toilers Club. Do you remember the name, the Toilers Club?
Yeah.
Where was that? She wants to know if we were asking, I think we put the word out, does anybody know the name of this bar and that bar? And she suggested the Lawrence Toilers Club. Do you remember that?
Toilers Club.
I remember the name because it's such an ugly name.
Right. And it later changed to another name.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pretty significant in the city. But I think originally it might have been on Newbury Street. I have a feeling it was on Newbury.
It sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
She also had a question, and I'll pose it to the master here. What's the name of the candy store opposite the St. Lawrence's Church? Do you remember that? Do you recall that? She says it was a candy store.
And it was a bakery. There was a bakery.
There was a bakery, I know.
Mary's Bakery. There was a bakery. In fact, there were two. There were a couple of bakeries on that part of Newbury Street. Mm-hmm. So if you're facing the church, it's the left side, is Newbury Street side. The right is East Haverhill. But yeah, there were two bakeries. One was a German bakery, I think. Yeah, one was German. Before you get to Brook Street.
Okay.
On Newbury. Candy, I don't remember any candy, unless it was with the bakery.
Ah, okay.
It might have been with one of the two bakeries. There were a couple of bakeries along Newbury Street.
Okay.
Opposite the St. Lawrence O'Toole.
Okay. Today, we're going to be talking about, as I said, really, this guy is absolutely amazing. And he's from Lawrence, and he was called the Great Impostor. When you hear what he did with his life, just how much mischief he got into in 60 years. And it reminds me, of a poem by Jack Kerouac, just very short. Kerouac says, "The only people for me are the mad ones, mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved, desirous of everything at the same time, the ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, 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 like fabulous yellow Roman candles exploding like spiders across the stars." So we will be presenting Mr. Fred Demara. And when you hear his story, you will understand why they actually made a Hollywood movie out of it and shown all over the world. He's largely forgotten right now, but you never know. I think somebody is going to rediscover him. By the way, I understand, Joe, that you are going to be consulted about a movie. Is that correct? You have somebody there's somebody. Well, we can talk about that another time. That's okay.
It's to do with Thelma Todd.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's the foremost authority on Thelma Todd. Joe is a rare treasure, and I hope there are some young acolytes somewhere waiting to take up the banner, okay? Because he's living history, a great historian. Here we have the Great Impostor. Amazing careers of Ferdinand Waldo Demara. Lawrence boy, posed as a surgeon, lieutenant, Royal Canadian Navy, performed operations on the high seas, successful operations. One of them was a chest operation where we removed a bullet from a guy's heart. Prison warden, who reformed one of the country's toughest cell blocks. Doctor of philosophy, applied psychology, ran a college. By the way, he never graduated high school. Trappist monk who took the vow of silence, and many, many others. This is just a starter, okay?
I was wondering if I can just mention
Of course.
the inside cover of all that he did. This way people will know from the start.
Let's take a broad view of just some of the stuff. I was researching this morning. I couldn't get a grasp of all the stuff he did. What do you have there, Joe?
Okay. Fred Demara managed to become a Trappist monk, a doctor of psychology, and dean of the School of Philosophy at a small college in Pennsylvania, a law student, zoology graduate, cancer researcher and teacher at a junior college in Maine, a surgeon lieutenant in the Royal Canadian Navy as medical officer on the destroyer Cayuga. He successfully performed major surgery. Then later on, he was a brilliant assistant warden of a Texas prison and a teacher and beloved idol of the children on a Maine island village. And that's all he did. That's everything.
Okay, an incredible tale. Expert at hoaxes, tops colorful career by becoming famous Canadian naval surgeon. Well, that was just one of the things he did. That was probably one of the most remarkable things he did, doing operations.
Right.
And they found him out, of course.
Yeah, but I think before the operation he had done, I heard that he read the night before. He read the medical book.
Yeah.
On how to perform a particular type of surgery. The night before, he read the entire book. The next evening, the next day, he did the operation successfully.
Amazing, yeah.
But
he had a photographic memory.
Right, no prior medical.
And he was amazing. He was a genius level intelligence.
Right.
To be able to do this stuff.
No prior medical school at all, really.
Yeah.
How did
he do it?
Yeah.
Now this is Napoleon Demara. Now let's go into his past. We'll start at the beginning. And he started in Lawrence. This is not Demara. This is Demara's father or uncle?
Uncle.
This is the uncle.
His uncle, yeah.
Now,
Napoleon.
The story of Demara starts in Lawrence. They were well off, were they?
Right. He was born December 1921, same year as my mother, my late mother.
Yeah.
And Mr. Demara, evidently, when he went to Lawrence, he found a partner named Mr. Toomey. And together they built the Broadway, the Palace Theater, the Modern Theater, and the Empire, which later became the Warner.
Well, that's pretty much all of Theater Row.
Exactly.
They pretty much built Theater Row.
Yeah.
And those of you who might not know any of Lawrence history, Lawrence had a fantastic theater section. It was so dense, it was actually in Ripley's, believe it or not.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
The picture on the left is the Broadway, is it not, Joe?
Yes.
That's the first one. They built that in the 20s.
Right.
They built them all in the 20s.
Yeah, that's the Broadway. Broadway Theater.
That was the Broadway Theater. That's seated about. It was enormous inside. It had balconies. Yeah. I think it seated 1,500 or 1,600 something.
But huge. It was quite large.
Yeah.
The Empire. Yeah.
Now, where is that located? Was that on Theater Row too, or no?
No, that's on Lawrence Street, and Methuen Street is on the right.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Lawrence Methuen. Now it's a parking lot for the Santander Bank on Essex Street.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Corner of Essex. It's the southeast corner of Essex and Lawrence Street.
Now, that later became the Warner.
The Warner Theater, right? Warner
Brothers. That the same building, or did they knock it down and rebuild the Warner?
I think that's the same.
Yeah, it looks pretty much the same as the old Warner.
Warner Brothers purchased the property later.
Oh, yeah.
And then they changed the name. They changed it, of course, to Warner Theater.
I think that was the last theater in Lawrence of the old theaters.
I think the Central.
Yeah.
On Oak Street.
Yeah.
which is much smaller, of course. They had no
Well,
balcony.
the big theaters.
The big theater, that
this, you go in here and you see like it's set up like an opera house, like an
Yeah.
Italian opera house with opera porches. What do they call them? I don't know.
Balcony. The balcony.
Balconies. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh.
And to get to the balcony, that building had the first, maybe the only, wooden escalator
a wood
that was
vessel.
operable.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
actually working because I was on it,
Yeah.
going to the Cinerama features when it was the Warner. But yeah, to get to the balcony, they had a wooden, it was rickety, a wooden escalator take you up.
Wow.
The only one in the country, I'm pretty sure.
You know, that lasted a long time, almost
Yeah.
to the 1980s, I think.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
you think they would have known better then?
I know, to keep it.
you
I know.
Just to think of the venues that could have had it.
Oh,
But
and my mother and I saw Priscilla Lane, the actress Priscilla Lane there.
is it live?
Yeah, and I was 12, 13, and my mother was driving
Yeah.
to downtown, and we stopped at the lights at the intersection of Lawrence and Essex Street. So we were stopped back in traffic. We're right in front of the theater.
Yeah.
My mother looked over and she says, "Oh, there's Priscilla Lane." And she was talking to the woman behind the window, the clerk. And so I kind of waved, and she waved back. And she smiled at us.
That's right.
She waved back at us.
Yeah.
Priscilla Lane.
You know, that's right. For those of you youngsters under 60 out there, you probably don't know the name Priscilla Lane, but she was a household name. Yeah, it's like Julia Roberts or something.
Her and her
I
sisters.
mean, it's like, oh yeah.
The Lane sisters.
Yeah, I think they lived in Salem, New Hampshire or somewhere. didn't they?
Andover.
Andover, yeah.
She married a military major.
Oh yeah.
And they lived in Andover, but they had a summer place, Big Island Pond.
Oh yeah.
Big Island
That's
Pond.
right. You know, my father worked for the gas company.
Yeah.
And he had to go over there to deal with a gas problem. And he had a conversation with her. He told me
really?
it was-
Yeah.
it was-
So he
he was
met her
always
too.
so thrilled. Oh my God.
She stuck around the area.
Yeah,
She was
that's
on the
right.
Boston radio
Oh yeah.
show. She had a radio feature there. But she was pretty popular in the area way back.
All right, here we are.
There
yeah.
it is. Wow.
Again, if you're not from Lawrence, you don't know anything about Lawrence history. Lawrence had this very dense theater district. It was amazing, and that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
Pretty much, you know.
And then you can't see it on the right. There was the old Victoria Theater.
Oh yeah,
on
that's
the
right. Yeah.
So there was another one.
Yeah, can you imagine Saturday nights over there? Huh? Must have been amazing. In those days, people dressed up too.
Yeah.
You know, women wear elegant dresses, men suits and ties and stuff. I never thought I'd miss that, but I kind of do now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we skipped a little bit here. So he grew up. His parents, his whole family was involved in the theater.
Right.
He lived in an elegant house on Jackson Street. Jackson Street is full of beautiful, elegant mansions.
At the time, they were single homes back then.
Most of them are still there, but they're run down. Okay, they've really gone to seed. But in those days, they were really elegant places.
Yeah.
What happened to the family?
Well, let's see. They were doing fine. Ferdinand's father and his partner, Mr. Toomey, did quite well. They built the theaters. Then, Ferdinand's father, senior, was a projectionist, also at one of the theaters on Broadway. Then, I guess it was closer to the Depression era. The Depression hit, and it affected the people going into the theaters, and then the prices varied, and it affected business entirely, both around the country and primarily in Lawrence as well. So the theaters were so affected that the money wasn't coming in, and so it was really costly at the time to have a large home, particularly on Jackson Street.
Oh yeah,
a mansion. So the family had to relocate, and they moved to South Lawrence on State Street. It was, according to the story of the book, the house used to be a part of an estate or a barn, which I wasn't aware of. But on State Street, which is off of Andover Street, and there's a railroad tracks in that area. But they did live, and I think that house is still standing as well. It's the house on Jackson Street, again, still standing. But yeah, the family had to relocate to a smaller place in South Lawrence.
okay. Then he goes to local schools. He ends up at Central Catholic.
Right.
He's on. You told me he was on the football team. He was the only freshman.
He was the only freshman.
Freshman could be on the varsity football team.
He actually
He's a
was
very powerfully built man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what happened? He
backed out.
He backed out. Dropped out of high school.
Quietly, yes. Yeah.
And where did he go? From high school? Where was his first move?
Let's see. Where did he go? I think he tried to enter the military. Then he backed out, and then he got caught.
I seem to remember reading something.
Yes.
Before the military, he went to a monastery.
Oh, monastery.
He was a monk.
Right.
And then they transferred him out. Then he went into the military. Then what happened?
I think the religious aspect of his life was his mother affected that.
Oh, yeah.
She was from a Catholic religious background.
Yes.
And I think she had an influence on him for him to do what he did. Trappist monk and so forth, the seminaries. That would have been his mother's side.
So from there, he ends up in the military.
Yes.
So bored with that, goes AWOL.
Yeah.
Ends up in the Canadian Navy. Shows up as what? A
medical?
A doctor.
Yeah. With no training whatsoever.
Don't forget this. Don't forget. He doesn't even have a high school diploma.
No.
Okay. And the story I read was that this is during the Korean War, early 50s.
Yeah.
They have an emergency. There's 16 Korean
right.
soldiers are all shot up.
Right.
So they load him onto the boat,
yeah,
and he gets to work on it. But before he does, medical books.
Then, and then I guess he had 3 operations, or 3 Korean soldiers he had to operate on. And they were all successful at the end, as it turned out. But he didn't have any medical training. He read medical books. He had a stack of books that he was reading before he would do whatever surgery that was necessary. But just by reading the books is how he was able to accomplish what he did.
He never lost a patient.
No,
and
he did very well.
How do they find him? How do they, this is pre-internet days. They would have caught on to him pretty quickly, I think. If
I guess
the
Canadian military, they weren't as intense in doing checking backgrounds as our country is. It still is. But back then,
I read that they did catch up with him.
Eventually,
they sent him to a military court.
Right.
But they were so embarrassed of having not checked up on him that they quietly dismissed him.
Right.
Just quietly dismissed him.
Let him
Deported
go.
in the United States.
Let him go away.
Go away. Just go away quietly.
Because they were embarrassed. They didn't catch him. They didn't catch him early on.
That would have been interesting if he had stopped right there, but he was just getting started.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the other things he did, Joe?
Oh, God. What did he do? In the prison. He was a prison guard? Or he was
assistant warden or something
in Texas, I think it was, in one of the southern states. Mm-hmm. And he, the warden's daughter, he had a affair with the prison's daughter down there, and I don't know.
He went on the lam again.
Yeah, he just did a lot of different...
He ended up at a college out of the Midwest.
Yeah.
Teaching psychology, ends up as a dean.
With no prior training.
Lecturing industrial psychology, social psychology, and abnormal psychology.
And I guess a lot of that he probably had read beforehand.
Photographic memory.
And then
he
applied.
Must have just been able to see it right in his mind.
And he passed. He passed the other end.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, this guy.
And I think he ended up again. And I think the Army must have caught up with him because he did a year in prison.
Yes.
It must have been the AWOL.
AWOL, yeah.
He gets out, and then where did he go after that? It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I was studying this morning. I said, I just don't have time to put together a chronological thing of what he did.
He ended up in California, though, at a boys' club or a boys' facility. Some sort of not an orphanage, but some sort of an organization to help young people. And he was, in fact, that might have been his last affair or last function before he passed, I think.
Well, he he ended his life as a chaplain.
Chaplain.
A visiting chaplain in a hospital in Anaheim. But they found him out.
Yeah.
But they liked him so much that they said, well, the patients love the guy.
Right. So they
and he had a rich friend.
Yeah.
I guess they let him stay in the hospital.
Right.
Even when he was old, he fell apart at the end. He gained a lot of weight.
He did.
He had diabetes at the end. But they let him stay in a room there.
Yeah.
And
he was only 60 when he passed.
yeah, he was
60 years old. That's young.
Great Impostor. Turns up as monk. He turned up a second time as a monk.
Right.
He went someplace else.
Yeah.
He turned up as a monk. He spent a year or two at that, and then left again. He liked to turn up at colleges.
Yeah.
And it was more than one. There was another place in Maine, I believe.
Yes. A boys' school?
He pretty much started a college.
Yeah.
Became Walsh College and then Walsh University, I think.
Right.
And it's still there, I believe.
Wow.
It's a bit of his philosophy.
Yeah.
You say, what was driving him? He said, I had come to follow two beliefs. One was that in any organization, there was always a lot of loose, unused power lying about, which can be picked up without alienating anyone. The second rule is, if you want power and want to expand, never encroach on anyone else's domain. Open up new ones.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I have to think about that.
Yeah, they're both interesting.
Yeah. What an interesting take.
He succeeded, basically, in what he had earlier planned to do in all of these events that he participated in. And if he used those two ideas, and they worked, in his case.
One of the reasons, Joe, that he could do so many of these things, he could get entrance into so many places, was that he had a very commanding, he was a powerfully built man. He had a very large, commanding presence, but not in a way that would make you feel intimidated or resentful. He's just generally good-natured.
Right.
And you could see it. It'd be very interesting. If you're really curious, go onto YouTube and put in Fred Demara, Groucho Marx. And he was in, I think, 1959, he was on Groucho's program.
Wow.
You Bet Your Life, was it?
Yes.
And
I used to watch that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you got to see this. This is a real gem.
Wow.
You see him holding his own with Groucho Marx, the king of the one-liners. And so
Yeah.
fast. But he's good-natured. Good-natured, very quick-witted, very intelligent. And you get a picture of his personality. We will include that in today's program, but there was some question about copyrights and so forth.
Yes, that's
so we'll
right.
we'll just leave it to you if you're curious
Yeah.
to go on and check it out.
Yeah, I want to check that out.
Yeah, that's great. How many of us are going to have a movie made about us? True life story of his escapades seemed tame. Actually, I think his real life was even more interesting than the movie.
Yeah.
What did you think about the movie?
Well, to me, Tony Curtis was, of course, miscast.
Yeah.
As far as visually, they could have picked another Hollywood person to do the lead. Excuse me, but he did a good job. Tony Curtis did acting because he's an actor, of course, but the character and the type of movie, to me, it ended up being a comedy more than a bio.
Yeah.
And I would have suggested, like I said, another actor, another lead actor, and then it would have been a biographical type of movie about a person and all that he had accomplished in his lifetime, from New England, primarily.
Joe, I wouldn't be surprised if they make another movie. I think they're ripe for another movie. There seems to be a lot of interest online about this guy, and it could happen. Oh, here's another one, El Gran Impostor. It's in Spanish.
In Spanish, yeah.
It's a worldwide success. I mean, it wasn't a success in its portrayal of Fred Demara, but it was financial success, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a scene in here where he's pulling the two. This is Tony Curtis, of course.
Yeah.
He's pulling teeth of the commanding officer of the Coyoga.
He's a dentist.
And afterwards, the commanding officer said, "What a fantastic job. The guy's a great dentist."
No training.
No training.
No training whatsoever.
Just checks the medical books the night before and goes in and does what he has to do.
And I guess he's a good reader, evidently. Unbelievable.
Now here he is.
There it is.
Here he is with Groucho Marx, and really, you really get a great feel for his personality.
Yeah.
He's gentlemanly, but somehow commanding, and good-natured, but smart. He's just got so many gifts.
He's the type of person that if you know whatever he tells you, whatever you're talking about, the subject matter, whatever, it seems as though he would have you convinced that he was right.
Obviously,
that he was correct. Whatever was discussed.
Oh yeah.
He had that presence probably that you had to believe him.
You know, he had some great friends in Hollywood. He was friends with Steve McQueen.
Wow.
And I'm not sure. I got two different stories. When Steve McQueen died, one story said that he did the eulogy at Steve McQueen. The other one said that he gave Steve McQueen the last rites because he had been a pastor and a monk.
Yeah,
I'm not sure which one is correct.
Yeah,
but they were very close friends.
Yeah, I don't know.
Also, he was friends with Melvin Belli. Do you remember him?
Yes. The last name was similar to mine.
The youngsters, the under 60 youngsters out there would probably do not remember him.
Yeah.
But he was a household word. He was a celebrity attorney, and he did everybody. He did the Jack Ruby defense.
Yes.
The Rolling Stones, Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Lana Turner. The list goes on and on.
Yeah, his name was frequently mentioned in the news.
But he was close friends with him.
Yeah.
But I have a quote here, and this really goes to the man. It tells you something about Demara, who he was. Melvin Belli said of him, he was one of the world's great men. If he had stayed in the church, he would have been my candidate for cardinal or even pope.
Wow.
And this is Melvin Belli, who pretty much, if you're an attorney like that, you pretty much know men and women, the good, the bad, and the ugly, mostly the bad.
Right.
But you know people's motivations, and that's quite a compliment.
Yeah.
He goes on to say his greatest flaw was his lack of patience and abundance of pride. He was bitten by an imp. He says he was not an unhappy man, but he was always restless, and you can see that in his life. He was a talented man who could have attained anything he wanted in life.
Wow.
Yeah. Great Impostor dies in obscurity at the age of 60. Dies in obscurity at the age of 60. Well, rest in peace, Fred Demara. When he got older, he gained a lot of weight, as you can see. Yeah. He had diabetes, and he was going to have his legs removed. And he was a little despondent at the end. He kind of regretted not having a little bit more focus and patience. But he never hurt anybody. Never hurt anybody, and he claims he never stole anything, never stole any money. He borrowed things. So rest in peace.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's our Lawrence History program. I think this is episode 15, and we hope to see you soon. If you want to comment on anything, Lawrence History Project @gmail.com. Let us know what you think. If you have any questions, we'll put them here to the master and see what we can come up with, okay? So be well, everybody. Be kind. Adios.